Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salawat ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this week's Jummah in the UAE is titled Honoring People of Achievement and Distinction, of Virtue and Distinction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. The most honored among you are those that show righteousness. When this ayah was revealed, remember this ayah was revealed to a people whose tribal system was based on lineage only. You backed up your family no matter what. Your strength lied in your family, number of your family, the strength of your children, especially boys, the depth of your lineage, how rich your lineage was. This was the rule of law, how strong you were, how much family you had. So when the ayah of Quran came that said, no, virtue is based on your righteousness, this put everything upside down. And you see how the Prophet ﷺ, even though Islam is a religion, it's a religion, yet it covers all aspects of a person's life. And the Prophet ﷺ personified this. The Prophet ﷺ himself was honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the leader of the Anbiya, prayed as Imam of the Prophets themselves. We make no distinction between the Prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to make the Prophet ﷺ a leader among the Prophets alayhim salatu wassalam. And then the Prophet ﷺ himself, he recognized honor, honored people and recognized their value and their virtue and their position of their achievements. So Rasulullah said, whenever Khadija radiallahu anha was mentioned, the Prophet said that she believed me when other people belied me. And she backed me up with her money when people man'uni, they stopped me and they prevented anything by coming to me. Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha also always backed up the Prophet ﷺ, and through her virtue, even after she left this world, the Prophet ﷺ never forgot her virtue. Even her friends, the Prophet ﷺ honored her friends because of the relationship with Khadija radiallahu anha. You know, one time, subhanAllah, the Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha heard when the Prophet ﷺ was speaking about Khadija. She said, she got a bit jealous, so she said, Ya Rasulullah, why are you still talking about Khadija? She was older and she's left this world, and Allah has given you somebody young and has given you better and younger. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Wallahi, Allah has not given me better. That she believed in me when people didn't believe in me, and she backed me up with her money when nobody backed me up. So the Prophet ﷺ held no punches when it came to Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. And the same too with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. When the Prophet ﷺ neared the end of his life, and the Prophet came into the masjid, and he was as if he was giving his final speech or farewell to the Sahaba. Nobody understood except Abu Bakr and radiallahu anhu. And he interrupted the Prophet and said, Fadaka ya Rasulullah, ya Rasulullah, we give up our mothers and fathers for you, ya Rasulullah. And the Sahaba got really upset because the Prophet, the Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, interrupted the Prophet when he was speaking. And the people would say, Abu Bakr, how can you speak when the Prophet is speaking? And the Prophet said, Da'aw, leave him alone. Do not talk against Abu Bakr. Wallahi, I swear by Allah that there is nobody that has done a favor to me except that I have recompensed them. I've paid them back except Abu Bakr. For his service to Islam, I can never repay him. Only Allah will repay him on the Day of Judgment. Imagine saying that. Subhanallah. Abu Bakr, he also talks about saying Abu Bakr, there was no one in my whole ummah that was as loyal to me as the company of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, with his sohbah, with his companionship and his money. Backed me up with everything. This is not just with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, but with the other Sahaba as well. You hear this very famous saying in many Jummahs, Arham ummati bi ummati Abu Bakr. وأشدهم في أمر الله عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان and on and on. The Prophet ﷺ said in the meaning of the hadith, the most merciful of my ummah to my ummah is Abu Bakr. And the most straight on my deen is Umar ibn al-Khattab. And the most true in modesty is Uthman ibn Affan. And the most the righteous judging is on Ali radiallahu anhu. And then it goes on and on. It talks about, subhanallah, the best reciter of Quran, Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. The most knowledgeable of what is halal and haram is Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. And the most knowledgeable of inheritance is Zayd ibn Thabit. And every nation has a trustworthy guardian. And the trustworthy guardian of my ummah is Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiyallahu anhum. So we see, subhanAllah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he honored people of honor and virtue and mentioned them and motivated others to have a healthy competition. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned about Quran. He was sitting one time with Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, and he said, you have been given a mizmar, the voice, one part of the voice of Ali Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam had a beautiful voice when he remembered Allah and praised Allah. And he said Abu Musa al-Ash'ari has been given a mizmar, a part of that beautiful recitation. And he said also, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in relation to Quran, if you want to hear the Quran as fresh as it was revealed, listen to Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who was perfect in the recitation of Quran, kama unzil, as it was revealed. The Prophet ﷺ didn't stop at that as well. He would give gifts. He would gift people, those that achieved something very valuable. One time, subhanAllah, Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ gave a very important mission to Sayyidina Abdullah bin Unais radiyallahu anhu. And this is a long story, but subhanAllah, the crux of the matter, when he came back from this mission successfully, the Prophet ﷺ was so happy with him, he gave him his staff. And he said, on the day of judgment, this staff will be a sign between me and you. And actually, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Sayyidina Abdullah radiallahu anhu told his family, he put it in his will, that I want to be buried with this staff. And he was buried with it in his shroud. Imagine the staff of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave away his cloak to another Sahabi on another occasion. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't just give preference or didn't give admiration to those people that excelled in deen. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was building his masjid, he brought a person forward. He said, bring him, because he is the best at building. He was tying the bricks together, and he was building the masjid in the best possible way. The Prophet ﷺ recognized this skill, and he brought him forward and he said, bring him closer. I want him to work on this and this and this. So the Prophet ﷺ showed us in this worldly matters, in religious matters, we should give due regard to those that show achievement. And, a shout out to the Springs community, of course, that achieved something that is very unique, the brotherhood and love in the masjid that was built on this iman. We didn't have any relations in Dubai. We became the family of each other in the Springs, and this is why this community has endured for so long, even though physically we're far removed. Those that went to Canada, and those that went to America, those who went back to England, those that moved on but kept relations and kept that connection, because that connection was based on the love of Allah, inshaAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a shout out to those that were responsible for that community spirit and that, mashallah, everlasting community spirit, subhanAllah. And it doesn't stop there. When we look at Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu and Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he conquered Mecca, when he made the announcement of the adhan being called, everyone, especially the nobles of Mecca, because the nobles there were based on lineage. But the Prophet ﷺ, who did he call forward? He said, Ya Bilal, climb the Kaaba. And this was an important, an absolute deciding moment in the history of the Arab, that the Prophet ﷺ gave the most honorable of positions, the adhan in Mecca, the first adhan to be called in Mecca, to an Abyssinian previous slave radiyallahu anhu. May Allah be pleased with Sayyidina al-Master Bilal radiyallahu anhu, that climbed the Kaaba and gave the beautiful adhan, the call to the most famous prayer of the Muslimin until the Day of Judgment. So you see, the Prophet ﷺ gave honor when it was due, encouraged, motivated, and gave reward to achievement, whether for dunya or even for deen, and even for dunya as well. So we too, if we're in a position in our authority, that we should give due, and we should encourage and give due regard to those that show honor and reward those that show achievement. May Allah give us tawfiq. And that includes our families, of course. We should include our families always in giving praise to our children, to our wives, to those of our family members that have showed honor and loyalty and trustworthiness. We should always go out of our way to recognize achievement. May Allah give us tawfiq, because this is the sunnah of our Prophet, our dear Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah give us tawfiq to always honor those that are honorable, and to inshallah reward those that show high achievement. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.